Welcome back to the next part of my World of Warcraft world building series. World building of Warcraft building. War building. That's what I think WoW devs would call it. We come to call it Ortcraft in some places, but kinda loses the Warcraft, and it could mean any craft. Anyway, I'm back here today to keep talking about the cosmology of World of Warcraft. While writing the last part, I quickly realized that the topic of cosmology would get pretty huge quickly. So it's been split up into multiple parts. Not all the realms will take up whole videos, and parts because there will be less interest in things I made up from almost nothing, but because there is also less to say. That said, without much needless ado, let's delve into the Shadowlands. Much like last time, I'd like to begin with a little bit of a real-world history behind the Shadowlands. Like I said in the last video, the cosmology of Warcraft used to be pretty simple. It was pretty much just the twisting nether at first. Then some realms started being added, like the Emerald Dream in Warcraft 3. Shadowlands was one of the realms that started being alluded to in Wrath of the Lich King. When you start your Death Knight and press 1 to get your horse, your new horse is then rudely stolen by another Death Knight, and to retrieve it, you have to chase them to the Realm of Shadows. When you go there, it appears as a little more than a shadowy reflection of the zone you're in, but it starts seeding in the sense of a new realm, tied somehow to death and spirits. The next time we really see it is in Legion, when we rescue the little Eredar child spirit Una from a realm called a dark place, where mysterious creatures called the Soul Eaters lurk around. It has some pretty unique mechanics to it while you're on the quest, and it alludes to the general sense everyone had of Shadowlands back then, that it was a cold and dark and dangerous place. Strangely enough, in the expansion itself, you never see these again. And then the Shadowlands expansion came, and what we got in it was an airport, golden idyllic plains full of angels, a warrior heaven full of Scourge architecture somehow, a blue forest full of fairies, and a land of gothic castles and vampires. Just about the only place that felt like what we thought Shadowlands were was the Moor, and the less said about the Moor, the better. I don't hate most of these in isolation, but they hardly feel like they belong in what we were told about it before. And sure, I get the argument that in an MMO you want the zones to feel diverse, so people get to experience a lot of different biomes, don't get bored of the same aesthetic all the time. But you end up having to compromise what the setting is supposed to be, and maybe a better idea would be to not set an expansion there. If I was designing an expansion tied to Shadowlands, I would do what Legion did. Set the main expansion somewhere more familiar, tied to Shadowlands, and only go into the realm proper briefly, in small bits, like we only visited Niskara or other Legion worlds for a few quests. But my main exercise was not to design an expansion for WoW, as we know. It was to design a cosmic realm for a TTRPG game. A realm that can keep true to its spirit, no pun intended, and doesn't have to create all these different, very living environments. So here is the look at my version of the Shadowlands. First off, let me tell you what you won't find here. You will not find Bastion. It's part of Holy Light's Paradise now. You will not find Ardenweald, which is now located in Livespring. You will not find Revendreth, which has been merged with Nathreza, about which you can hear more in my previous video. You will not find the Brokers and Tazavesh, because they become a type of ethereals. And you won't find Korthia, because Did we find it in WoW either, really? I will describe Shadowlands to you in the same way a spirit arriving there would. Keep in mind, it is no longer the only afterlife realm. Each cosmic realm serves as the afterlife for souls that ended up attached to the force these realms represent. If you find yourself destined for the realm of death, well, I got bad news to tell you. You were probably pretty naughty in life. You were probably dedicated to spreading death and ending life. And all that baggage ended up drawing you towards like-minded souls, fellow killers and destroyers. But first, you wake up in a shadow of the real world, a whispery grey realm that lets you see a mere reflection of what happens in the material plane. This is the Veil, the coterminous plane lying between our world and the Shadowlands, and what in the canon game you see while you're a spirit running back to your corpse. But there's no corpse runs here. Your spirit wastes away and is drawn towards the great whirlpool in the sky. No Kyrians to bear your soul, though if you were a lucky special adventurer, a ghostly, gaunt spirit healer might put you back among the living. You end up pouring down the river of souls and wash out on the dry, barren landscape of the grey plains. You are not the only spirit here. You find yourself surrounded by hundreds of mindless apparitions, wandering around, barely remembering who they were. You wonder if this is the same fate that will befall you eventually. However, in the distance you see a tower of some kind, rising miles above the featureless landscape. Though it looks foreboding, faced with the risk of turning into one of these spectres, you decide this is your best chance of getting out of here somehow. So you go towards it, and keep going, and keep going, and you don't know how much time has passed, but it feels like this building isn't getting any closer. Like no matter how much time you spend going to it, it feels like it's the same distance. The despair and the isolation of this plane are starting to get to you when your determination draws the attention of one of the attendants. Because you apparently played a bard and maxed your persuasion, you manage to convince the attendant to take you there. Using one of their handy gateways, they take you to Oribos, the place of judgment. Oribos is not a big, shiny airport for your soul. It is a dark and foreboding place where the Arbiter, the greatest of this plane's attendants, sits in judgment and sifts through the countless souls pouring down. Turns out there is a bit of a backlog in souls. As the Burning Legion continues to go through dozens and dozens of worlds, they continue to cause death on a hitherto unspeakable scale. The machine of death isn't so much broken as it is a bit clogged up. Every death burdens a mortal soul with a metaphysical baggage. The Arbiter has to sift through that baggage, separate it from the soul, and send the soul back to its proper destination. You feel almost relieved. You weren't supposed to be in this ghastly place. But thanks to your bard-like persuasion, it agrees to judge you now. And it sees the things you've done and decides, nope, you actually belong here. Well, not here, but you belong somewhere deeper, and you will soon be taken to your final destination. Just as a note, you can't just easily convince the Arbiter to skip your position in the line. I'm just doing it here for the purpose of getting to the point. Soon, Harberon arrives on the edge of a ghastly river. After paying some customary price from your soul's anima, the energy generated by living soul's experience, you are taken further down the river of souls. You are driven to your final destination. But on the way there you cross other planes, destined for other souls, plane you are not allowed to disembark on. Through the deathly mists, shapes of black, gnarled trees with twisted branches, wicked thorns, and razor-sharp leaves poke through. As you focus on them, the image clarifies further, and you now see the river passing through a dark, forbidding forest. Strange shapes blow with the wind, hanging from the tree branches. Through the darkness permeating this place, you cannot tell if they're parts of the trees or hanging corpses. Somewhere in the distance, terrifying roars echo and seem to make your very soul shiver. Then you spot a pair of glowing eyes staring down at you from a crevice. This is Thros, the Blighted Lands, the birthplace of all nightmares. Those devoted to defiling nature and taking away the hopes and dreams of others are condemned to stay here for eternity. Over countless aeons, their spirits are twisted into nightmarish echoes of what they once were, forever damned to be consumed in the fear they once caused. You might be familiar with it as the realm of the Drust, the wicked spirits of ancient Vrykul who refused to be contained by death. To this day they seek a way to escape their fate, but they are cursed to never see the light of day again. In canon Warcraft, it's not really clear where it belongs. It's apparently tied to the Emerald Nightmare, but the nightmare is largely gone and Thros remains, and they keep attacking Ardenweald. So in my version, I put it firmly in the Shadowlands as the antithesis of nature. As you try your best to focus away from the blighted realm around you, Harberon keeps paddling through the river, and eventually Thros becomes nothing but a memory. You once again watch images blink past you, brief impressions of countless realms, each worse than the last, each seemingly consumed with a different kind of death. But you must have focused on an image too much, and shapes and sounds once again clear out through the fog. This time you hear much more noises. They are not howls or voices. These are sounds of battle. The river beneath you turns to sickly pus, the ground around it turns to flesh. Instead of trees, giant hair grow out of the bleeding, necrotic ground. Mountains of bone and marrow tower over the landscape as horrifying, twisted monstrosities shamble forward. Every time two monsters meet, they cannot help but start fighting each other. Limbs are hacked off, blood spurts everywhere, and guts are spread like fine sauce. In the distance, countless shapes continue to battle, each growing larger and more twisted. On the horizon, giants as big as mountains continue to hack each other's limbs off and bite chunks of flesh as big as islands and spit them out. This is Maldraxxus, the realm of endless battle where no two souls can ever be at peace. Those who murdered thousands at wars and reveled in the slaughter are condemned to stay here forever, mindlessly dying and rising again, consumed in the pain they once caused. Incapable to even enjoy what they once loved. The realm mirrors their twisted imaginations. All they can think of is slaughter, so the very ground beneath their feet is ripe for murder. They thought they were proud warriors, serving their lords and their countries, but they all brought was pain and suffering, and this is their final reward. Harburn chuckles darkly and continues on his way. I decided to preserve Maldraxxus, in a way, because I think there is something to save there. Notably, gone is the inexplicable Scourge architecture. After all, the Scourge took their architecture from the Nerubians, not the Shadowlands. Gone is the duty to protect the Shadowlands, which makes it feel like being a mass murderer leaves you with a grand reward. This Maldraxxus isn't a place of duty, a place of honorable warriors who for some reason turn into abominations. It's a place of horror, punishment, and pain. As you try not to think of the noxious realm of endless battle again, the images and sounds and smells slowly drift out of focus, and the myths of the in-between take over once again. It doesn't take long before you catch the whiff of another smell. It smells like rot, like an old, stagnant bog. As soon as you catch onto the idea, the boat seemingly drifts into another realm. You are quickly surrounded by a vast swamp, tall trees hanging over your heads, their leaves almost touching the boat. As far as the eye can see, these forests and stagnant waters filled with fetid corruption stretch. Among these swamps you do not see many moving shapes. what looks like old corpses just lay idle, staring out into the sky. But there is no sky above you, just mist, thicker than any you have ever seen in your life. But then, out of the corner of your eye, you spot one of the corpses quickly turning its head to stare at the boat. Some of you may call it the other side, or the stagnant bog, the realm of Muezala, the father of sleep. Here the souls of those who served him are allowed to forever rest, and not allowed to do anything else. They pay the ultimate price for their dark bargains, an eternity of nothingness. Nothing ever changes, ever still, ever dormant. Partially based on the other side from World of WarCraft, the domain tied to Bonsamdi and Muezala, it expands on what else is out there in this place. Since we got rid of some of the places that don't really belong in the Shadowlands, we can focus on those that do. Places that, in the canon game, were reduced to footnotes. When you finally lose sight of the morass, the mists take over once again. This time the boat keeps swimming for a little longer, as it seems you manage to avoid most sights. However, that only means you are getting much, much deeper. Finally, a sense of biting cold blows through the air, and you can't help but look out. You're immediately overwhelmed, dead or alive, by the impossibly cold wind all around you. As the mists part, you look up and see towering glaciers on both sides of the boat. Looking further out, you see endless icy plains with countless icicles poking out of the landscape, and in every icicle, a corpse. This is Chill's Reach. The souls of those who brought death and suffering through indifference and avoidance are condemned to feel what they brought upon others. They were called to the suffering of others. They looked away when they knew they could help. Consumed with their own petty little lives, they brought on countless deaths. Chill's Reach is a canon realm of the Shadowlands, but one we see only very briefly in one scenario. Now, this feels like a deathly, dark realm, but in World of WarCraft we don't get to explore this place. We gotta play around with the fairies, and there's nothing wrong with playing with the fairies. It's just not what you expect in the realms of death, you know. The boat keeps on through, and finally, with enough focus on what lies ahead, the icy winds of Chill's Reach pass on, and you once again wade through the mists. It doesn't take too long before once again you hear a familiar sound. Wind howling through rocky crevices, the chattering of teeth of damned souls, and chains pulled taut as tormentors drag their victims with them. The mists pass, and you see possibly the worst place in the universe, the Maw. A seemingly endless, barren, rocky landscape, stretching in every direction. The river seems to have lost all of its water, and you sail through nothing but wisps of energy now. Large, ominous towers pepper the horizon as creatures made of animated armor torment countless shades. This is the Maw. This is where the traitors and the worst mass murderers are held. There is not a shred of good left within these souls. All that remains is eternal torment and imprisonment. A towering figure hovers over one of the towers and finally turns to face the boat. It looks down and points its hands towards you. "Just do not look at him," Harberon warns you. "Your soul will be scarred forever." Clad in gore armor and chains flowing with the wind, seemingly at its command, this figure's long white beard waves with the breeze. The figure finally speaks with a deep voice reverberating through the barren landscape, barely understandable, lost in its own depth. "This is your final stop." It's the jailer. Again. But not the same jailer. It's not Zoval, who's now a demonic lord of domination over in the Twisting Nether. It's not the former arbiter trying to break free from his chains. He's the jailer, not the jailed. He's an ominous, dark figure, but one that is not your enemy, unless you try to defy death or end up here for your crimes. He believes that dead should stay dead. that there is a natural order of things, and that order includes that all things must end. He's not a villain, he's a force of nature. So yes, I salvaged the Maw. As awful as it is to play through it, I think WoW designers did a very good job at representing hell. They made an awful, horrific place you never want to go back to. The biggest problem with the Maw was the jailer. I kept asking myself, why is he even called the jailer if he's the key prisoner who wants to break out and let everything in there loose? No, this jailer is actually the jailer, based on his original concept art. While Zovar fixes what went wrong with the specific character in WoW, this guy fixes the role he was supposed to take. While you disembark to get punished for the lives you've taken in the service of your glorious leader, and let's be frank, you enjoyed it or you wouldn't be here, Harboron continues on. The only way up is down. Now we're almost at an end. Only one place remains that lies lower than the Maw. It is unthinkable. Your small minds cannot truly comprehend what lies there. If you were to lay your eyes upon it, you would surely go mad. No mortal souls ever saw it and survived to tell the tale. You begin to hear animalistic sounds. Some sound like howls, and some sound like teeth gnashing and grinding on something. Some sound like faint whispers in an odd, maddening tongue. No soul is ever condemned to pass here. The only thing that lies here are the spirits of death itself, the servants of the end of all things. Some call them devourers, for at one point in the future so distant none of us can comprehend it, they shall awake and devour all things. They lie in eternal slumber, awaiting the call to action, and far in the deepest reaches lies the death of the universe, Thanonart. I always loved the idea of devourers. They are mysterious and poorly explained in canon, but every time they appear, they are treated like pests. I do, however, enjoy thinking about them a bit like the Langoliers. They're cleaners. They are the pinnacle of death, the ultimate end, destined to devour everything and turn off the lights at the end of all things, so to speak. My players have actually encountered them when we were rebooting the universe to start this project. And we may have shot Thanonart with a spaceship to be able to escape. It's a very long story. But that is also the end of our journey to the Shadowlands. It is not a place you want to stay in for moments or for an expansion. It is a place of torment, of punishment. It is a place of death, endings, not whole living worlds. It is a place you want to keep away from you and stay away from, no matter how tempting the offers of beings trying to flee from it might be. Death does not like the dead returning, and those who help them. You might also notice there was no mention of the first ones. They have been deliberately scrubbed from the universe. The first ones always felt to me like someone at Blizzard decided to just make their own version of the Titans, but better. Long story short, the Titans are now the Pantheon, not just a Pantheon of order, but their whole story is a matter for another video. Just know that there were no Uber Titans who designed the cosmos, no artificially placed arbiter to subjectively sort the souls into an ironically soulless machine designed to fuel these realms. Everything here is a natural process that shaped itself with the forces of the universe. It seems that even Blizzard seems to be staying away from the first ones now. But who knows, maybe the idea will come back in later expansions, no matter how unpopular it was. So, this was a look at Shadowlands, redesigned to serve not as the setting you live in my TTRPG version of World of WarCraft. It is one of the realms of eternal damnation that serve as a backdrop for actual living worlds. If you have any questions about something I missed or forgot to mention, leave them in the comments below. And of course, like and subscribe and keep feeding that algorithm. Next time, I shall see you in a video about the first place that we haven't explored in canon, and that is paradise, the realm of light, and one of the cosmic origin points of the universe. I'll see you there.